And there we are.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Wow.
And hi, Sai, to everyone joining us again here for part 2 of our linguistics discussion as it relates to karate.
Yeah. So for this episode, I didn't want to recap last time because we got a lot of stuff we want to cover. And now I know that we have a time limit. So
Yeah, that helps.
So this time we're going to kind of do a round robin. Noah has picked 3 topics. I've picked 3 topics. We're going to try to hammer them out in an hour. I don't really care if I cover all of my last topic. So if you want to start first, I'm perfectly okay with that.
I was going to start with my most controversial one, which is also my shortest topic, so which is the one that you know about already, which would be the word os.
Os!
Yeah. Probably most popularized by Kyokushin, but other styles use it too. Primarily Japanese styles of karate, or mainland Japan, or styles of karate that are primarily American in a way.
Yeah.
So the term os is one that if you were to go by the sort of explanation that you get from Kyokushin is that it's a combination of 2 words, which would be essentially translated to oshi and shinobu, something to that effect, which is to push and endure.
Mm-hmm.
And they've essentially portmanteaued those together into this short little guttural phrase that they use as sort of their catch-all response of yes, no, I understand, I don't understand, let's do it, basically everything that you could think of. And within their schools, makes perfect sense for them, and they're happy to use it that way. And they have an explanation from their founder as to why he wanted it done that way. Now, in truth, where did that come from? Well, that is something that came from the Japanese military. The soldiers and sailors of the Japanese military had this tendency to just sort of everything in the same way that it is used in Kyokushin. And outside of the military, it was generally considered to be quite rude and aggressive and abrupt. For those who aren't very familiar with Japanese language, there's a lot of formality built into the language, and there's levels of formality. So, you can have one level of formality with your friends and family, and another with, general acquaintances, and then people who are higher than you in a hierarchy of some kind. And so there are different levels of formality, and os kind of is under all of them. It's got no formality to it. So even amongst like the general populace of Japan, it's not really a very polite phrase. Okinawa in particular, though, does not generally see that as very positive. So, and part of that is probably the same idea of that hierarchical language, because they use Japanese as their primary language now. But part of it is probably also some carryover from just the general tension between Okinawa and mainland Japan, because culturally they are very different places, and the Japanese military did not make the best of impressions on Okinawa. So for those who are unaware of that historically, the Japanese military did things during World War II, like convince the Okinawans that the Americans and other Westerners were going to eat their babies and whatever else, and that here's this grenade, go blow them up. That they really did not do some very good things. So there's some of that involved too, I think, is the general dislike of the Japanese military culture. But not being an Okinawan person, I can't verify how much of that particular part is true. That just kind of would make sense to me. But that's kind of the where I wanted to start in general was
absolutely. So
I've got a lot of Kyokushin friends. Let's just upset them.
the thing with os is it's actually three phrases.
Ah, okay.
So os is a shortening of Ohayo gozaimasu, which is
Yeah.
good. So it's kind of the shortened greeting, which if I was to come up to you, I'm a male, you're a male. If I said, oi, and that's my greeting.
Yeah.
If we were punk rockers, that's fine. If we're not punk rockers, it's kind of rude. So this shortened, condensed greeting of os, it's only meant for like young males who are, I saw Scott commented, but I didn't see what the comment was. It's kind of this young male greeting. It's this
Yeah.
testosterone.
It is a very masculine
Right. And
phrase.
and another thing about os is to push and endure has a very slang usage,
It
which
does.
is not PG-13
No, it's
and it's
not.
not dojo appropriate. So there's a lot of terms in Japanese that in martial arts we avoid
Mm.
because they're kind of slangy. For example, we know kohai and senpai. There's a third one,
Go high, right?
dohai. And we don't use dohai because it's this, again, this slangy kind of male to male, off the cuff kind of thing. So we don't use it at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? And os is kind of like that. I would say that, and this will get into my next topic if you don't mind if we kind of segue. Okay. So in Japanese, there's something that's called a D-voiced vowel. Okay. We see this all the time, but people don't recognize it. We danced around this all the time in our last video. So when you say os, there's a U at the end.
Yeah.
It's o, su, os. We drop this ending vowel, we de-voice it, and there's several situations where we do this. But when you Romanize the language and you write the language, you still need to write the U. All right. So all you Kyokushin guys out there, if you're saying os, it's O-S-S-U. Right?
I do see most of them keep the devoiced U in Kyokushin. It's usually Shotokan that drops the U.
Right, right. And it's kind of weird. So
Yeah.
all devoiced vowels, it's either an oo sound or an e sound. And the e sound is written with the English I. All right. Base example is when we start counting. We have ichi. That's correct. But more natural pronunciation is ich.
Mhm.
Then ni, san, shi, go, rok. So it's roku, rok, right? Shich, shi, chi becomes shich.
Yep.
Hach, kyu, ju. So right there, numbers 1 through 10, we have 4 D-voiced vowels. It's always an E, it's always an U. And they come up in 2 situations. At the end of an utterance, if the consonant before it is a non-voiced consonant, so K, T, S, I got to get my notes, K, S, T, a P, or an H. If we have that non-voiced consonant, then the ending U or E is dropped. Not always, most of the time, okay? The other times that it gets dropped is if it comes before one of these non-voiced consonants. All right, so this is where jutsu, people mispronounce jutsu and they misromanize jutsu. Classic example, drives me nuts.
Yep.
Right? There it is, written
The I.
incorrectly.
It is a different word.
People who learn the Japanese language, well, that's jitsu.
Yep.
No, it's not. It's jutsu, but we devoice both the U's. So it's jits, jits, which to the English ear often sounds like jits or jits, but it's not. Jutsu. You were using the example of su, ki.
Yep.
And I made a joke about it. I went, well, it's suk, right?
Right.
Is it suk, Noah?
No.
No. Right? Ski. So this happens all the time, and I think a lot of people who aren't connected to a Japanese style or Japanese instructor or an Okinawan instructor, if they have no ties to the homeland, they don't know about this.
Yeah.
And it's something that's so natural to the Japanese, they don't think to explain it. Of course you do this. We've been doing this since we were 4 years old. Are you a 4-year-old? Like, you should know this. Well, no, I'm a foreigner. I don't know this. All right. So, general rule of thumb, if this is confusing for you and you don't want to look it up, when in doubt, pronounce it out. All right. It's better to say jutsu than it is to say jitsu, because jitsu sounds like another slang word that's going to get you in trouble. Don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
so when in doubt, pronounce it out. And then, of course, know how to pronounce Japanese vowels. I, U, E, O, right? I noticed my new instructor is one of those Nico Ashidachi.
Yeah,
Like,
that was how they pronounced it in my
my
first
heart,
style too.
sensei, we're going
Was
to have to talk.
Nikarachi. Yeah,
So,
forgot about
yeah,
that one.
this devoiced vowel, it's not that pronouncing it is wrong. It's just not very natural. It doesn't sound natural to the Japanese ear. All right. But again, when in doubt, pronounce it out.
Yeah.
So Noah, surprise me with your next topic.
So I was just going to talk a little bit about body part names for the purposes of martial arts. And I'm sure this is something that you can shine some extra light on too, but because you've done more of the looking at the kanji than I have.
Right.
But, there are some definite sort of terminology situations where people get confused because we do have things that are named after body parts or that it's helpful to point out what part of the body you're using. And by that I mean you're talking about anything to do with the hand. There's a lot of names. So you've got ken for a fist, but that's not the only word for fist either. Kobushi, I think, is another one for fist. There's a couple of them. And then, there's one for whether it's open and whether you're hitting with this part or this part. There's different ones and all kinds of things like that.
So,
And even into the one that I found the most amusing to look up was elbow.
MP?
Because, MP. Because,
that's your knees.
Yeah. Because when I, all through my karate, it's always been MP. Now when they've referred to hitting something with your elbow or attacking the elbow, it's always been that word. Looking it up though, and I have heard other styles use the word hiji instead of MP. And if you were to look it up, a lot of the time you'll find that it's only called NP when it's being used as NPuchi. NPuchi, the actual strike, with the elbow. And I looked up the kanji for that because I'm like, okay, well, why are there two different words for this? And the kanji breaks down for elbow to something like monkey elbow.
Interesting.
I'm not quite sure why.
So I think good examples of this is when we talk about the feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know we have neko ashi dachi. Ashi is our foot, right? But if we're talking about kicking something, we don't use ashi. We use soku, right? So we have jo soku geri. Jo soku is the ball of the foot. Jo is front. Soku is your foot. Yeah, jo soku. So that's the ball of the foot. If we're talking about the instep, the top of the foot, that's soko, which is a combination of soku and ko, soko, top of the foot, right? And then when we talk about like kicking with the toes, we don't use soko at all. It's the kanji for claw, and then the kanji for like, not in front of as in mai or zen, but it's kind of, protruding claw. So when we talk about tsumasaki, geri, it's like a protruding claw kick, talking about the nail of your big toe.
Right? Yeah.
So another example would be with our hand. We know karate. This is karate. But this is shuto. So right. Shu is your hand. Mm-hmm. It's the same kanji. To is a blade. So when you have Japanese kanji, you often have onyomi and kunyomi, right? Which are two different levels of pronunciation, and they're used in different things, and it gets really confusing. And I don't care to explain it because we don't got enough time, right? But like shuto, if you go to an Aikido class, or you look up in your judo, your Kodokan judo book, it's not shuto.
Tegatana.
Tegatana. So the same character, different pronunciation. So it can get confusing for people. Like when we talk about zen kutsudachi, we know that kutsu is to bend, but the nuance behind this is that it's your knee bending. Whereas when we talk about to break something, we use the same characters at times, because this can mean bend and it can mean break. Bending, it's referring to something like a joint. If you're breaking, like the scroll that I sent you guys when Sensei was in the hospital, it's Hyaku Setsu Fukutsu, 100 breaks but never defeat. So that's the same kanji character for bending, but in this case it means breaks. So yeah, I think that can get confusing, but you just have to remember that, we can say this is my palm, but we can also say this is, like my hand. Like,
right.
Or we can say that this is my knuckle, or we can say it's a finger joint. Like,
yeah.
We have this kind of thing in English as well.
We do. And I think it just becomes more complicated for people because it's not their own language. The ones that I do know that are confusing to people sometimes, because you mentioned ashi, because ashi can mean your foot or your leg.
Mm-hmm.
And ude.
And with te. Te can mean your hand and your
hand. And ude can mean your forearm or your whole arm, including your hand. Right. So it's kind of contextual on a lot of them.
I was looking up heito.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So hei is your back, but in this case, it's specifically the spine. So to is, again, a blade or a knife. Heito is the spine of the knife.
Right.
So the blade of the knife, this is the spine of the knife. Right? And that's the kind of kanji you use, but it has so many other pronunciations and so many other connotations. Like it's the same kanji that we use for a shoulder throw, which the name escapes me at the moment. You probably remember.
Are you talking about seoi?
Yeah, seoi. So it's similar kind of kanji. I don't know if that's the exact same one, but similar kanji, similar context, different pronunciations and stuff.
Yeah. Now, and this would kind of segue into another topic, but which is my third topic, so I'll hint at it, but I won't segue into it immediately, because you get a lot of these words that also, not only are there multiple words for one thing, but some of those words, can refer to completely different things,
right?
That are also related, which is sort of what you were talking about. So, for example, in Japanese, if you're looking at ude for arm, it can also mean ability or talent or skill.
Right. Well, hand can as well.
Hand can as well, and hand often did in uchinaguchi, right, which is kind of where I wanted to take my final topic, but we'll get there after a bit.
We'll get there. I'll segue into mine before we get to that. So one of these words that can mean different things in different contexts, even though it's the same pronunciation, it's the same kanji, is dan. Dan can mean rank. Dan can mean level.
Mhm.
But let's say we have the Nahanchi. We have Nahanchi Shodan, Nahanchi Nidan, Nahanchi Sandan. And then we have Pinan Shodan, Pinan Nidan, Pinan blah, 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 right? Even though Dan's used in the same way, there's actually different connotations between them. So Nahanchis are different level of Nahanchi,
Mhm.
Nahanchi Shodan. Then Nahanchi Nidan was created later. It's kind of piled on top.
Yep.
And then Nahanchi Sandan was created later, and it's kind of piled on top. Okay, so it's this level of Nahanchi.
Mhm.
Then we get to the Pinan. That's not how it works with Pinan,
Right.
right? It's not more complicated, more leveling. No, it's here's this performance. And we're going to split it into parts or acts. If you were to go to the opera in Japan, Act 1 is Shodan. Act 2 is Nidan, because this is a performance split into parts. Pinan is one performance split into 5 parts. Pinan Shodan, Pinan Nidan, Pinan Kota. And this is where I wanted to talk about name changes in kata. So everyone has this, not everyone, a lot of people have this concept that names of kata are sacred. Never change the name. Anyone who does change the name, we hates them. And it's like, okay, stop. Just stop. Stop. So name changes in kata happened all the time. From the 1860s all the way up until 1940s, name changes happened in Okinawa.
Yep.
We're not even talking in Japan. In Okinawa, name changes happened for kata. So one of the first ways that names change is we kind of add something to the end of it. Wansu dai, wansu sho, kusanku dai, kusanku sho, basai dai, basai sho. We're adding this suffix to the end, or we can add a label to the front.
Yeah.
So we did Shorinkan. We have basai dai, or basai dai, basai sho, which is itosu no basai,
Yep.
and Tawada no Basai.
Yep.
So some would say, oh, well, this is a description, Matt. You're being silly. Am I? No, this is a name change. We are changing the name of Pasai from Pasai to Basai, right? There's one for you. And then from Basai to Basai Sho, Basai, Basai Dai. We're changing names. And then we get into Goju Shiho and Niju Shiho. Ho is another one of these suffixes that was added to the name later on. All right. And this is important to note because when we switch from one pronunciation to another, either because we're switching languages or switching regional dialects, Goju Shiho is a classic example of the pronunciation changed. It's not called Goju Shi in Okinawa.
Right.
I mean, it is, but it wasn't originally, right? In Uchinaguch, it's not Goju Shi. It's not Goju Shi Ho. It's Noah.
Useishi.
Useishi. U is 5. Se is 10. And Shi is 4. So 5 10s and a 4 is 54. However, in Uchinaguch, we didn't have to put something at the end of it, right? In standard Japanese, we do. It's called a counter. I don't say I have one paper. I say I have one sheet of paper. This is my counter. I don't say I'm wearing one pants. I say I'm wearing one pair of pants. This is my counter. We have this with Ippon Kumite, Sanbon Kumite,
Yep.
Nahanchi Shodan, Nahanchi Nidan, right? We're adding counters to them. So we have Goju Shiho, which was Useishi, and Niju Shiho, which was
Niseishi.
Niseishi. So it's not much of a change. It's just a change in pronunciation, right? From when Uchinaguch to standard Japanese. Now here's where I'm going to kick most people in the teeth because Pinan is Uchinaguch. In standard Japanese, the exact same word is
Would be heian, although
Heian.
the word
The
becomes
exact same
different when
word.
you start looking at some context. But yeah.
Right. Like this isn't a name change. It's just a change from Uchinaguch to standard Japanese. And then because I used to be a Korean guy, Korean practitioner, then we have Korean, which is Pyongan. And it's again the same word, different language, different pronunciation. So we have this adding of suffixes or labels at the front. We have this change in pronunciation from when we go to Uchnaguch to Standard Japanese to other languages, right? And then we have the one that is the most controversial of all, a complete name change. The characters change, the pronunciation change, and I'm going to pick on your favorite form, Noah, because I want you to show people how to react to controversial information. So
Okay.
Naihanchi is not the original name of Naihanchi. It got a name change in Okinawa as well. Big controversial topic that Matt's going to cover, right? It used to be Daipochin, all right? Now, this is something that is documented, but isn't well known, and it's hard to find documentation because it's all in Japanese. So you have to know people like me, or like Scott, or like Andreas, or like Motobu to find the original documents and translate them. So Daibochin, we know the legend of Naihanchi. Oh dear, I hate legends. Do you want to tell the legend of Naihanchi, Noah?
Oh, which one? The rice field
Exactly.
one, or the boat one, or the wall one?
The most basic one.
I mean, the most basic one the first one that I ever learned was the fighting with your back against a wall one.
Okay.
Um,
Not bad.
followed by the rice paddy one.
The rice
Over
paddy
the rice.
ones. Okay. So Daipochin is 3 kanji. Dai is to chase or to pursue. Po is this hard one to translate, and it's why there's a lot of different legends. And Chin is super simple. It's the same as Sanchin. It's battle.
Yeah.
So we have this pursuing chase, this battle. Where does that take place? Well, Po, it can mean the dike. It can be the shore. It can be like a cliff face. It can be several different things. So when people are telling about Naihanchi and they give this legend, what they're doing is they're telling you what the old name used to be. So yeah, this is Naihanchi. It's when you're pursuing someone and you're fighting in this thing. Right?
Table flip.
Table flip, yeah. So if people are getting so upset that how dare you change Naihanchi to Teki and then go to Korea and change it to Chogi, oh my goodness. Well, it already changed once. So what's the big deal? So someone interviewed Shigeru Nakazato, the founder of the Shorinkan, and he was asking him about name changes in karate. And Shigeru Nakazato said that Kusanku changed during his lifetime. The name of Kusanku changed during his lifetime. I personally don't believe it. I'm going to doubt it and say it changed maybe 20 years before his lifetime. Maybe. Upwards of 20 years. So Kusanku used to be Ufukun. Ufukun is big boss or major official. Then we get to Kusanku, which is Mr. Public Official. They share a kanji. They changed out Ufu to Kusan. They kept Kun. Okay, so this isn't a big name change. This is more like a translation. Major official, Mr. Public Official.
Yep.
Not much of a name change, right? But this probably would have happened sometime in the early 1900s. And when we look at documentation, one of the first kata demonstrated in front of the Emperor of Japan was Ufukun. But if you read commentary about this event, everyone says it's Kusanku. But if you look at the documentation from the event, it's Ufukun. Now, for someone like me, who's not emotionally attached to these names, great. This is cool history stuff, right?
Yep.
Doesn't bother us a bit. Maybe a little bit, but not much, right? And the reason a lot of these names changed is because they're trying to make it more friendly to the Japanese, in part, and because there's something that happened that most people don't know about. When the Ryukyu kingdom was forced to dissolve, and it was taken over by the Japanese, Japanese laws were being put on the Uchina, the people of the Ryukyu Islands, and a lot of those laws dealt with names. If you have a strange pronunciation and you're Japanese, you need to change the pronunciation of your name.
Yeah.
So this is where we have Nakaima, not Nakaima, but Nakaima, which becomes Nagahama, right? This is where we go from Oyadamari to Toyama. Funakoshi's name changed 2 or 3 times. Like the pronunciation changed and then the kanji changed as well. Because as a new law prohibited using certain kanji, you had to change your name again.
Right. Some of them were bigger changes than others. Like
yeah,
Higashiona became Higaona, not a huge difference.
Right.
But Gusukuma became Shiroma.
Right.
So yeah, there were some very minor changes and some very big.
Do you remember Itosu's other name? Itosu? I can't remember. I know I've seen it so many times, and it's just
I want to say it was Satanu something.
I don't know. So if I'm a Ryukyu person, and I had to change my personal name and my family name, my whole clan name going back through history, and I had to change it, am I going to care if a kata name changes? Probably. Yeah. Probably not. But nowadays, people are so defensive. And again, it gets into this irrational, illogical thought, and then this combative dialogue. And there's no need for that.
Yeah.
No.
Like I have not seen the documentation myself about the Daipochin name. Right. It's something I've heard before. It's been brought up before.
Like I know George Alexander published stuff on it quite a while ago.
Yeah. So it's out there, but I haven't read like more in context original sources or anything like that. So it's one of those things where I consider it a definite option. That's absolutely possible.
Yeah.
It's also possible that might not quite be the most reliable source, or it may just be a mispronunciation or misinterpretation of a text, or any number of things, but it could also be true. And
it's hard to tell because when we have Pinan and Nahanchi, most people just put it in a katakana and call it good.
Right.
We don't know what this word actually is. And we kind of hit on this last time. Is this a name? Is it a description? Is it a proper noun? Like we're not entirely sure.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize with Japanese and Uchinaguchu as well, is that they don't have a single alphabet.
Right.
Like we have one alphabet that is all of our sounds, and that is all, and every word that we write is made up of those sounds or combinations.
Right.
And in Japanese, you've got 3, and some of them are sounds, some of them are whole words, some of them are multiple words.
They're concepts.
Yeah, and so it can be very complex. So when you have something that's written with kanji that represent entire words or phrases or concepts, you have a very clear idea of what that word is, even if you don't necessarily know its pronunciation.
Right. So another example with name changes, again, I'm going to pick on this book because I hate it so much. This book, all right, we talk about Chinto and Anan. He's in here. He's in this book. He's mentioned as Taika. Taika of Fukuan Anan, which we now know, thanks to the research of and the translation of Scott Mertz, it was actually Lao. His name was Lao, and he was called Chinto and Anan because that's where he was from. Chinto is like eastern town.
Yeah.
And Anan is a province in China. So another person in this book is Aeson. Aeson's mentioned in this book as Bukan. They wrote his name as Bukan because the kanji characters, it's the same as Budo, right? But in Uchinaguch, it's Asan. But in standard Japanese, it's Bu. So they wrote his name wrong in this translation. So many people are confused on it, but it's there, and you kind of have to shovel through the linguistics to figure it out.
Yeah, and you have to accept that there's going to also be, in a lot of these historical components, there's going to be some level of doubt to any of it because we have to fill in some blanks. So you have to understand that, okay, we have some things that suggest it might be that. It might not be. That's just the best conclusion we can draw at the moment. And different people are going to draw different conclusions based on which pieces of evidence they have seen, how much weight they put on those pieces of evidence.
And I know I'm gonna pick on Kusanku again. You and I were big proponents of look in the Oshima Hiki. Here's the Oshima Hiki. It's right there. This is the date of the Oshima Hiki. We got this documentation. We know 100%. I'm obviously being dramatic, but when you actually read the Oshima Hiki and you actually dig through what's the guy saying, he's like, oh yeah, I was somewhere in China and I saw this random demonstration. So we have this legend of Kusanku came to Okinawa and he taught the Okinawans. And then you actually read the documentation and you're like, that's not what it says at all.
No, he did a demonstration. This guy, this official, did a demonstration.
Mr. Public Official.
Yeah, Mr. Public Official did a demonstration. I have seen two different translations, though, of some of the things that he did. Because one of them, they both kind of allude to the grabbing and hitting. And then there's one that says he did like piercing movements with his legs, and then there's another translation about the scissoring bit. And so, depending on who translates what, you can get different things too. And I think one of the things when we're looking at that too is not only the grain of salt, but you have to understand that the historical component is an interesting factor, and it can lead to inspiration in your training and things to focus on and maybe things to play with. But it also doesn't change what you have been given.
Yeah, it doesn't change the physical aspect at all. All this type of discussion, it's just academic.
Yep.
So if you're training Nihonchi and you're learning your applications, which are not bunkai,
no,
right? But you're breaking down the kata, which are bunkai,
yeah,
and you're training and this academic stuff doesn't cheapen that at all, right? It doesn't say, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're using Goju Shiho and it's actually Useishi, so your kata is useless.
Right.
We don't do that. You know, it's just, here's a little bit of background information.
Yeah. And it's easy to get, very emotionally invested in something that you put a lot of time in.
Absolutely.
And the same thing happens when you're looking at the lineages of different styles, because, people don't realize that, our concept of ranks and things like that, and how long it takes to do certain things, and who's allowed to create kata and start systems and that sort of thing, is pretty new, and that people were getting,
That's one of my topics, so we're going to hit that later.
Yeah, well, people were getting very high ranks at very young ages, early in the 1900s. Kano Jigoro founding judo at 22, I believe correctly. So a lot of these ideas, if you get really wrapped up in them, I think they could be a problem with your training.
Yeah.
But more than anything, they just inform where it came from, give you a better understanding of the context in which it was developed, which can give you some guidelines and information that help you work out possibly applications, for example.
Right.
Well, even if not applications, at least themes that you want to explore with those applications.
Absolutely.
But you don't necessarily have to. And if it changes, it doesn't necessarily mean that anything you found was wrong. If there came out a new translation of the Oshinahiki that said that, oh no, he wasn't saying scissoring motions or piercing motions with his legs, it said he was strangling them with his legs. Okay, cool. So we've got triangle chokes now in Kusanku. But
Right.
does it mean that the throwing motions that you were doing before or the kicking motions that you were doing before are wrong? No, not if they work and fit the kata and everything else, but you're now more informed about the potential source of that material, and that might give you other things to look at. So you got to try and look at these things in a way that doesn't get you upset.
Agreed. And that's like I talked about last time. That was part of my inspiration for doing these videos is that there's so much combative dialogue that's kind of unhealthy, and we need to tone it back a bit, you know? I know I get over dramatic just because Noah and I are friends, but like, yeah, I mean, there's no reason to be hateful towards people just because you think a certain way and they think a certain way. If an Okinawan practitioner is hating on a Shotokan guy just because of a name change, this is very divisive and it's not good. We're all brothers in martial arts. Like, what's the Okinawan saying?
Ichiriba chulde.
See, you're so much better at saying that than I am. But yeah,
Well,
what we meet, we're all brothers. Like,
exactly. Which does lead into my final topic, actually,
there you go.
because I did want to discuss Uchinaguchi a little bit, um, and we touched on it a little bit in the last episode, and essentially, the Okinawan people, the Uchinanchu, had their own language, and it was something that after the Meiji Restoration in the late 1800s, when they dissolved the Okinawan government and started implementing Japanese laws and pronunciations, um, they also tried to kill the native language of Okinawa. They actually tried to get rid of a lot of cultural aspects of Okinawa so they could assimilate it into Japanese culture. Um, that's kind of one of their big things is that there's uniformity in the culture. And Okinawa was quite different, being halfway between them and Taiwan, close to China. It's a little bit of a different place.
And we talked about this a little bit. This is where this kind of myth of Uchinaguch is a dialect of Japanese
Yeah,
comes from. It's not a dialect of Japanese. It was its own language. The dialect of Okinawa now is Okinawa Ben, which is kind of this mixture of Uchinaguch and Standard Japanese.
it's their version of pidgin English, like that sort of a thing. If you go to Hawaii, for example, and you hear things that have a lot of native kind of sounds or even phrases and words to them, and it's a similar thing. There's mostly Japanese, but then every now and then they'll slip something in that's not Japanese, and it'll be a little bit odd here and there, or
And
a weird pronunciations.
I think part of it too is a lot of people don't understand what happened to Okinawa after World War II. So we have this time period from the 1860s to 1845 where Okinawa was owned by Japan, as part of Japan. And then we have this time period of 1945 to 1972 where it wasn't owned by Japan.
Right.
It was a subsidiary of the United States. And they were kind of given relative freedom to express their culture yet again until 1972. And then it was kind of like,
Yeah, and I think that's probably where the dialect thing became a little more prevalent was after 1972.
right.
Because before that, everything that I've read indicates that it was a lot more like some of the just atrocious things that they did in deaf schools in America, for example, where they just simply, if they caught you speaking that language, they'd hit you with a stick and they'd put a dunce cap on you and hang a sign on your neck and basically try and get everyone to publicly shame you for doing it.
The nail that sticks up.
The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. And that's one of those things that I think I do think the dialect part came about in the 70s as a more PC way to, oh no, it's just a dialect. Don't worry about it. It'll, uh,
Never mind that you can't understand anything we're saying. It's just a dialect.
yeah. And they did have a lot of borrowed words. They definitely had borrowed words. If you listen to some Uchinaguchi things, there are definitely words that you recognize. And then there are definitely words that are very different. And so my favorite comparison um, for things being similar and things being different at the same time is counting. So you got ich, ni, san, shi, go, ro, shi, shachi, ku, chu in Japanese. And I always have to look this up because I still don't have all of the
I know
counting
touch,
in Shinaguchi.
right? Touch is one,
It's
and
that two.
teach,
Teach.
teach
Teach is one.
is each.
Touch is two. Michi, yuchi, ichichi, muchi, nanachi, yachi, kukunuchi, which is a fun one, and two, which
Two.
is
I remembered two.
yeah.
Um,
So
yeah. I mean, and you can hear the similarities.
yeah, and
A lot.
you know, and then some of them are totally different. So you've got teach and ichi. Okay, close enough.
Yeah.
Tachi and ni. Michi and san, yuchi and chi. A lot of them are very different. Nanachi is interesting for seven because it's like they
Yeah, Nana
combined the two
and Chi.
pronunciations
Right.
in Japanese. Because for those who don't know, in Japanese, seven can be pronounced either shichi or yon, not yon, nana, uh, depending on what you are counting.
Yeah. Number four is she or
Yeah,
yon or
or
yo.
yeah, uh, and that's a kind of a superstition thing because those two numbers are not good.
Yes.
Neither's nine, but it's less bad, I guess.
Ku.
Yeah,
Q.
yeah. It's too close in pronunciation to like akma kind of a thing.
Evil.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
in
I
people's
can
heads.
see that.
So, but then you get into things like oh, I'm going to butcher this one, Nife Deberu.
I don't know.
So that is their Ohio gozaimasu, if
All
I'm
right.
remembering it correctly. Um, and I'm so bad at that one. So for those who are interested though in looking at some of these, there is a handbook, an Uchinaguchi handbook that was written by Dr. Samantha May, that she published online years ago at this point, and uh, I've actually got it pulled up right now because it's fun to compare some of these things.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
not too familiar with Uchin Gooch.
yeah, and it's one of those things that Nife Debru might have been thank you instead. So yeah, domo arigato, Nife Debru. So not Ohio gozaimasu. I apologize for that one. Um, but I'm not super
Now,
familiar with it.
does her article go from Uchinaguch to Japanese, or does it go Uchinaguch Japanese then English?
Uchinaguchi Japanese English
Okay.
with kanji.
Yes.
And this is this is a PDF that's 44 pages
Okay.
of a PDF. She does also have some articles online if you look them up. She's got a thesis published about kind of the evolution of this language and things like that. So it's actually a lot of really cool information. And it is something though that you wonder. Japanese is the universal language of karate, but it didn't have to be.
Right.
It's just that it kind of got forced into that. And even with that, you still have words that,
Like Pinan, we don't translate. We usually don't translate Pinan. Like
right, and you still get things like uh, gamaku that'll pop up as being some sort of weird esoteric thing.
yeah. Someone asked me to look that one up, and I'm like, I can't because I don't know the kanji. Like, there's no kanji. It's written in katakana, and I'm like, I have no clue. I have no clue even where to start. Like,
Yeah. And I think that the fact that Uchinaguchi was written primarily in katakana with a couple stolen kanji or hanzi from China, depending on where they got it from.
Korean, it's Hanja.
Yeah. So they stole symbols and alphabets and put it all together, and they just used that because, and the reason that they could use katakana was because
It's
it's
phonetic.
just a syllabary. It's sounds. So you we could steal the syllabary and write English out in katakana. So it was an easy thing for them to steal that was regionally available to use. And then they had borrowed words. So, well, there's already a written thing for that borrowed word. So we'll just take that and kind of roll that in. So you get, I think that probably helped the Japanese. It's a dialect. See, they've got our alphabet. Yeah, but anybody could.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's got a few phrases in it that aren't really easily translated to Japanese and things like that. You know, chinkuchi
Mhm.
is a popular example as well. Muchimiki, although you can, that one does have a Japanese version. It's just interesting that no teachers in Okinawa will use the Japanese pronunciation of Muchimiki. They could, because
Right.
there is a Japanese mochi mite or mochi mete. Close enough. But there is a Japanese pronunciation for mochimiri,
Yeah.
and they don't use it because
I think it's
there's sort of this, yeah, there's this sort of association of this is a very Okinawan word for a very Okinawan concept in an Okinawan art.
right.
And you know you'll get that atifa, which is sort of the shock wave effect you get when you hit something properly. Gamaku, like we mentioned, which is the whole waist, hips, lower back
Right.
area
A
and
lot of
how
people
you
say
use it.
koshi. Give it more koshi, and it's like koshi's just hip. Why are you even using the term koshi? Just say hip. And it's because they're getting at that term, which is different. You know.
Right. And it that's one that I like to mention in particular because it technically refers to an area of the body, but
Right.
within karate it refers very specifically to how you're using it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's both. And if you were to just kind of do a surface level translation, yeah, we'll call it hips, we'll call it koshi, that's fine. But that's not really accurate
Right.
because it's then you have to start getting way more specific, and then you get into like koshi wo hineru, which is the rotating of the hips, twisting of the hips.
It's kind of like
Well,
what we talked about with uke. You know, you can translate it to receive, but it's probably better just to leave it as uke.
yeah, and so I admit that it is quite a bit different from Japanese, and so for people who have been learning karate with Japanese language, trying to transition is probably not going to happen. You've already put a lot of work into memorizing and understanding Japanese phrases and terminology, and it's too different, which should tell you right away that it's not the same language.
Right.
Um, but it's still really culturally beneficial, I think, to try and learn some of these things. You know, I have had people give me just death glares for having the nerve to respond to an instructor from Okinawa when he asks if we understand in English, and I respond, "Hai, wakarimasu" in Japanese. I've gotten death glares for that. He put in the effort to learn English words.
Right.
Why wouldn't we put in the
There.
effort to learn Japanese words? And you know, the same can go for Uchi Noguchi. Not everyone in Okinawa, most people in Okinawa don't speak.
I, I think there's an age thing. If you're like over 60, you probably are familiar with Uchinaguch. If you're under 60, maybe not.
Right. And even the people over 60, you know, because they're not generally using it frequently,
Right.
it's still a small group. It's the ones who still get together with their old friends a lot and have conversations in almost entirely Uchinaguchi. And there are now programs in schools on Okinawa to learn it and try and spread it and get more education about it.
I remember, have you ever seen Byron?
Yes.
videos. Yeah, those are
I
pretty good.
don't remember his last name, but Byron. Yes.
Right. He's half Okinawan, half American. White as can be.
Yep.
Speaks fluent Uchinaguch.
Yep.
Yeah. But he was
And
based in Okinawa his entire life.
yeah. And, one of the things that I've experienced in dealing with people from Japan and Okinawa is just how excited they are when somebody has put in even the smallest amount of effort
Yeah.
to learn a little bit of their language. And, in particular, if they know some Uchinaguchi and that's what you use, they get even more excited because now you're not just learning the mainstream thing that everybody knows. You've actually done the research to find out that, oh no, Okinawa had their own language.
I
And
think
this is
part of it is most Okinawans consider themselves Okinawans first.
right.
They're Japanese second.
Yeah.
So when you do show an interest not in karate culture, but in Okinawan culture,
Yeah.
it really touches a lot of their hearts. Yeah.
So, but with that, I know you had one more topic that you wanted to hit on,
I don't know
and
what.
we'll get off my feel good topic and
Yeah,
and go
we'll
back
get
to
to our
upsetting.
feel bad topic. So I am specifically going to hit this topic because it is something that Noah and I don't like. We both strongly dislike this topic. I'm going to use the word hate. Noah's probably not going to use the word hate. But I wanted, again, this is part of us to demonstrate how to talk about topics academically that you don't necessarily like. So you might not know this, but Noah knows this. I am a published researcher on the topic of belt systems in karate. Woohoo! Weirdest claim ever. That's me, right? So when we talk about the rank system, there's several different names for it. You can call it KQ. You can call it the Dan QE, which is my favorite term for it. KQ is just like a grading rank system. Dan QE is literally Dan and Q standing system, right? Now, a lot of people would try to break this down into simply Q and simply Dan. I don't. I break it into Mu Dansha and Yu Dansha.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of people, when they think of a Mu Dansha is a non-ranked person. That's a literal translation.
Yep.
When they think of a Mu Dansha, what do they usually think of, Noah? Give me the standard answer, not the answer we give.
I may not be the best person for that. So, I think they probably consider somebody who either has not trained yet or is a white belt. They probably consider to be a Mu Dansha who has no rank because they consider the Q ranks to be ranks.
Yeah, they do. But a Mu Dansha is people who haven't trained, people who are in the beginning of their training, people who trained in a non-comparable art. Maybe you're a black belt in judo, you're a Yu Dansha in judo, but you're still a Mu Dansha in karate. It can also be someone who's trained in a comparable art, but not in your association or not in your style. Okay, so this is a Mu Dansha, right? And it includes the Q as well. A lot of people have tried to create this new term Mu Dansha is too derogatory. Non-ranked person, surely Q a ranked person. Let's create this new term and then you tell that term to a Japanese person, and they go, that's a made-up term.
Yeah.
Right.
Apparently, they didn't give us a full hour this time. They're giving me 20 seconds.
Really?
Yeah.
Stabbed in my heart. All right. Maybe we can do a part 3. It just depends on me.
On just this. Just this topic.
Just this topic. We'll do like 10 minutes done. No.
Well, thank you again. Before we get cut off, have a good